All right, chapter 17. What is the name of chapter 17? How of you can get this one? Real property valuation. Valuation means to establish a value for something, right? In other words, not evaluation. Evaluation would be like doing your diligence on a property, but valuation is establishing a value. In this chapter, we steal a lot from the appraisal industry. We are not appraisers. Nothing you learn in this class is going to help you become an appraiser. There is another commission that actually determines who gets their appraiser's license. They have their own set of rules. But we steal from the way that they do their evaluations. So let's start this chapter off with just a simple definition of what an appraisal is. Here's your definition of an appraisal. You see it up there in red. It is important. I'm going to use slightly different words, but a very, very similar concept, okay? So here's my definition of an appraisal. The most likely price, an appraisal is the most likely price that a well-informed buyer and a well-informed seller, most likely price that a well-informed buyer and a well-informed seller will achieve in an open market if the transaction is not subject to bias, B-I-A-S. The most likely price, okay, that a well-informed buyer and a well-informed seller will arrive at in an open market, assuming that there is no bias. And what I mean by bias, if you would like to write this in parentheses next to bias, is that the parties are typically motivated. The parties are typically motivated. Now this one says very, very similar to what I said, but I want you to look at my definition there. Did somebody write it down the way I said it?
Yes.
Okay, you wrote it down the way. Era, tell me what you think the important words in that are.
Well-informed.
Okay, the buyer and the seller are both well-informed. They have a decent idea of the price, the market conditions, etc., etc. Okay, keep going.
Open market.
It's an open market, and along with that, Era, let's just go ahead and throw in that part about being typically motivated. In other words, the buyer wants to buy and the seller wants to sell. Listen closely. The seller doesn't have to sell because of some impending job change or health issue or something like that. The buyer wants to buy. He doesn't have to buy because his grandfather lived there or Elvis lived there. They are typically motivated, correct? That's how you're going to arrive at the most likely price. And that ultimately, as we are doing our CMAs, as an attorney is doing an appraisal, that's the value that we're looking for. Questions or comments so far? Does that make sense? Now, I want you to look at the definition that's on the board, and I want to point this out to you. An appraisal is an opinion of value. Can someone explain why an appraisal is just an opinion of value?
Because it hasn't sold.
It hasn't sold yet. It hasn't sold yet. Matter of fact, Ebony, while you're on a roll, how about this? An appraisal is an opinion of value based on market facts. Keep going. An opinion, it hasn't sold yet, but it's based on market facts. What do we use to determine the value of a property? Closed sales, which are market facts. Does that make sense to you? Okay. An opinion of value based on market facts. Okay. Questions or comments about appraisal? You feel good about that? All right. Listen. I hate to do this to you, but I'm going to because it's important that you understand this for test purposes. Okay. As I told you, we as agents do not do things called appraisals. To call something an appraisal, you have to be an appraiser. You have to be licensed to do that. It is common that as agents, we refer to our work product as being a CMA, comparative market analysis. Do you remember that from the math on Friday? Okay. Or a BPO, a broker price opinion. The Real Estate Commission's position is there is no distinction between a CMA and a BPO. I'm going to tell you a long story, but I want to tell it to you really, really quickly so you don't have to worry too much about the importance of this for test purposes. I want to take you back to 2008. We keep coming back to that date because that's when the markets melted down and we ran into financial issues, the meltdown in the subprime markets, a lot of foreclosures, a lot of short sales, okay? You know what? There were a lot of agents who also left the business as well in 2008. You know why a lot of agents left the business in 2008? Weren't selling as many houses. You weren't selling as many houses, and a lot of them were distressed sales. So a lot of agents are looking for ways to make money. Okay, you're still not writing this down yet, but here's the deal. During that time, because there was a high number of foreclosures and a high number of short sales, banks would often reach out to real estate agents and say, hey, we need someone to help us know what the value of a property in Raleigh, North Carolina is. Keep in mind, these banks could be somewhere out in the Midwest or in the Northeast or something like that, and they're holding these notes, and they're not getting paid, and they need to know the value of the property so they can entertain a short sale or a foreclosure, whichever is appropriate. Why didn't they just call appraisers and ask appraisers what the value of the house was? It costs money. Yes, it would cost you $400 a pop to ask an appraiser to do it, but if you call a real estate agent, you might be able to get it done more efficiently. Now, I'm going to take you even farther back to 2008. You know, what happened in 2008, the exact same thing happened in the late 1990s. It was the meltdown of the savings and loan at the time. If you've ever heard of the Resolution Trust Corporation, this was the time that the S&Ls, the market turned on them. They were holding too much paper in regards to the value of the properties. They ended up selling some properties like 30 cents on the dollar. It was bad then. 20 years later, right on cue, it happens again. Every time this happens, the legislature always says, this can never happen again, so they pass laws. And the laws look something like this. In the 90s, what happened was they passed the FIRREA statutes, F-I-R-R-E-A. If you ever see that, just relate that to appraisal regulation. It was passed in the late 1990s. And here's what it said. Before I get there, do you understand that most loan fraud and most overvaluations of properties can't be done unless that there's an appraiser saying that there's a property that's worth a certain amount of property? Do you understand what I'm saying? Most times when you see meltdowns like this, there's some appraiser that said it was worth this amount of money. That's why the bank loaned that amount of money, right? So when they pass appraisal legislation, it goes something like this. You have to, all states have to set up an appraisal licensing board. North Carolina's is called the North Carolina Appraisal Licensing Board. They said you had to set it up. They didn't say you had to be creative. All right? So we set up the North Carolina Appraisal Licensing Board, and it says you have to be a licensed appraiser to do these things called an appraisal. Okay? Now, think about real estate agents. Wait a minute. We do this every day. Now, we don't call ours appraisals, but we evaluate properties every day, don't we? If a buyer is getting ready to make an offer on a property, don't you think they're going to look at us to justify the price of the property? Maybe not tell them what to offer, but at least give them an idea of what the market's doing. And my goodness, a seller listing a property, isn't a seller going to look at the agent and say something to the effect of, what do you believe my house will bring in this market? So we were doing these things, and we were concerned that the legislation might affect the way we do business. So within the FIRREA statutes, they carved out a little section that said this. This is actually going to be important. I still don't know if you're writing it down yet or not, but I think this is important for you to understand. Real estate agents can do these things called CMAs as long as it comes up in the normal operation of your business. Real estate agents, you can do CMAs as long as it comes up in the normal course of your business. Hopefully you can tell from my inflection that the key part there is the normal course of your business. Okay. Do you remember the examples I gave you? When would it come up in the normal course of your business? When you're working with a buyer who wants to know how much to offer, or a seller who wants to know what to list for, right? So basically, if it comes up in one of your transactions, you can do these things called CMAs. But don't do this. Don't sell your work product if there's no chance of you doing business with this. In other words, look what the banks just lured you right in front of you. That bank from the Midwest called you up and said, hey, We need a CMA done on this property. Can you run out and do it for me, Melissa? Melissa certainly has the skills to do a CMA. But what would the prudent question for her to be? Is there any chance I'm going to get the, what? Is there any chance I'm going to get the listing? Well, no, we work with a national remarketing company. We just need someone that's boots on the ground to help us with evaluation. Okay? What do you think now, Melissa? You can still do it. You just can't do it for what? For compensation. Okay, Melissa, how motivated are you? Someone just called you up and said, can you go out and do an hour of work for us? We're not going to pay you anything and you're not going to get the listing. How motivated are you? All right, how about this though? How about if they said, well, I'll tell you what, Melissa, we'll pay you $75 or $100 to go out and do it. A little more motivated now? You know, you're a little more motivated at this point, but you're in violation of the law. Because at this point, aren't you getting paid for something that doesn't come up in the normal course of your business? Let me remind you again, in 2008, there are a lot of real estate agents that are looking for their next meal, okay? They haven't sold a house in a long time. Do you know how long it takes me to do a CMA in my neighborhood? Watch this. I just did one. I just did another one. You know, for $75 for about 10 or 15 minutes worth of work, a lot of agents were tempted. Let me tell you how much one agent was tempted. She did 600 in 1 year. She did 600 CMAs for compensation. She never got a listing. Do you know how I know her story? They didn't turn it into a movie.
She was in violation.
She was in violation. She ended up where?
Jail.
On the back of the real estate bulletin. They don't actually put you in jail for this, but theoretically they could. Theoretically. She ended up on the back of the real estate bulletin. She lost her license for this, for doing 600. I gotta believe someone at the real estate commission said, at what point in these 600 CMAs did you not realize you were not going to get a listing? But you know what? Do the math. She did 600 of them. She probably made $100 a piece. She made 60 grand when there were a lot, and she probably just did them all in her PJs right there at her computer at her house. Not a bad way to make a little bit of a living. It just happened to be illegal. I don't think she was a bad person. I don't think she understood the illegality of this. Actually, you know who else got in trouble? Her broker in charge. Her broker in charge, because her payments had to go through him. So he was clearly aware of these payments that were being made to her. He got suspended for 2 years because of this. Another person didn't say anything but 400 times. Yes?
Okay, so the second bullet point.
I haven't even gotten there yet. I have not even gotten to the second bullet point yet. I'm just telling a story. It's a good story. Why is everybody leaving? It's a really, really good story.
What you said like the story.
They're going to be sad because we're about to get to the testable point right now. These people got busted because what they were doing was a violation of the rule. So it's actually a violation of law. Let me ask you this. Do you understand the need for this service, especially when we had so many foreclosures and so many BPOs that were needed? And we could put everybody in jail for doing this, rhetorically speaking. We don't put people in jail for this. They lose their license, okay? So wouldn't it be great if they just changed the law a little bit to allow for this? So rather than put everybody in jail, what we did is we changed the law. So today, Ebony, can you do a BPO or CMA for, can you do exactly what that woman got lost her license for? Can you do it legally today? Can you do a BPO or CMA for compensation today? The answer is yes, but you have to be a full broker. A provisional broker cannot do a BPO for compensation purposes. Only a full broker. And on test, you know what, on test they always talk about a non-provisional broker. A non-provisional broker is a full broker. That word always confuses me when I'm trying to read real quickly. But today, a broker can do a BPO or CMA for compensation in this particular scenario. Okay? Now, even brokers can't do them if it's going to be used as the basis to make a loan. But what did I describe these BPOs and CMAs being used for? Banks are literally I mean, think about this. Think about the short sale situation. During the time right after 2008, it's very possible that the bank every month would call an agent and say, well, what's the market doing now? What's the market doing now? What was the market doing at that point? It was going down. And so what the banks are trying to figure out is how do we cut our losses? What price do we need to drop to get this daggone thing sold and get it off our books? Okay? So rather than hire an appraiser 4 consecutive months in a row, it was much cheaper to hire agents. So it became legitimate to do this. If you're a what? You have to be a full broker. PBs cannot do this. If you're a PB and you want to do this, take your 90 hours of classes and get him out of the way as quickly as possible. Go ahead, Evan.
Now, you have to be a full broker to do either one of them.
What do you mean by either one? You mean for compensation or?
No, to actually do a CMA, because it's only stated specifically for BPO, which I thought BPO.
BPOs and CMAs are the exact same thing. They're the exact same thing.
So you have to be a full broker to do that.
Okay, I want you to finish that sentence correctly though. Listen closely to the conversation that Evan and I are about to have. You have to be a full broker to do a BPO or CMA for compensation only. Okay? Provisional brokers cannot do that.
Right.
Now, let me tell you why I emphasize this. Can a provisional broker do a CMA that comes up in the normal course of their business? That part never changed. So if you're a provisional broker and you're going out to do a listing, absolutely, I expect you to do a CMA as part of it. Do you understand the significance of that slide right there? It's tough, but only just so once you get your hands wrapped around it, okay? BPO CMAs for compensation are okay as long as you're a full broker and as long as you're not doing it for the basis of a loan, which, trust me, banks aren't going to accept it as the basis of a loan anyway. And then, having said that, one last important thing I need to tell you on this slide. This is going to sound strange to you, but this is how specific we are in this particular class. Agents determine what is known as probable sell price or probable sell range. Agents determine what is known as probable sell price or probable sell range. Here's what I'm telling you. Agents do not use the word value. Do you know who uses the word value or market value? Appraisers. It's actually defined by law. The word value, you have to be an appraiser to use the word value. So we don't use it. We use probable sell price, probable sell range. I know that sounds like it's splitting hairs, but that is important in this chapter. You okay with that?
BPO stands for
Broker Price Opinion. Okay? And Victor, for our purposes, a BPO and a CMA are the exact same thing. You okay with that? Okay, let's move on. A lot of this chapter, now we're back to very, very simple. We're back to very simple. A lot of the valuation chapter is based on things that you already know. But the fact of the matter is you just have to put them in the right context. In talking about value, remember, we're going to talk about concepts of value because we steal from the appraisers. Characteristics of value, if you like mnemonics, this has one: dust, demand, utility, scarcity, and transferability. Once you hear these words, I bet you're going to say, oh, that just completely made sense. Okay? Demand. You know, I sat in an econ class at Carolina, my chapel, in my freshman year. I sat in that class. I didn't listen to, actually that's not even true, I didn't sit in class. If there's 300 people in the class, if you don't go, nobody knows. So basically what I did was I threw Frisbee during that class time. But having said that, they actually tested us at the end of the semester. And all the stuff we talked about, all the stuff that was in that one book, came down to one thing. When it comes to economics, here's all you need to know about demand. Value follows demand. Value follows demand. Melissa, you're nodding your head, so explain it to me.
So the more buyers you have, the higher prices are going to have.
If everybody wants what you got, you should run your price as high as the market will allow it. But if nobody wants what you got, what are you going to have to do? You have to drop it until you find a market. Value follows demand. That's just a little bit off. Let me tell you, it has to be effective demand. Not only must someone want it, they have to be able to afford it as well. Does that make sense to you? Okay. So for something to have value, there must be demand. The next one, we use this word a lot in this class, in this chapter. Utility. When you think of the word utility, utility means it has to be able to satisfy a need. Utility means the ability to satisfy a need. For a property to have value, it has to be able to satisfy a need. I mentioned this either in class or to someone we were talking the other day about the concept of utility. If I'm shopping for a house for myself, my wife, my mother-in-law, our 4 kids, and our 2 dogs, does it really matter how many nice 2-bedroom, 1-bath condos there are in the market? They do not satisfy our need. Make sense? To have value, it must. Scarcity. Scarcity is just the flip side of demand. And in regards to scarcity, there is only a finite supply of product. And depending on, well, you've heard people talk about buyer's markets and seller's markets. Did I mention this the other day in class? A buyer's market is typically when there is greater than 6 months of supply. If it's less than 5 months supply, we usually refer to it as a seller's market. And what that talks about is who is in control of the market. That's the concept of scarcity, okay? And then finally, transferability. Let me take you all the way back to day one. Do you remember when I talked about the rights of ownership? When I talk about the rights of ownership, the bundle of rights, one of the rights you have if you own real property, you have the right to dispose of the property, you have the right to sell it. But remember me saying at the time, I can't promise you the ability to sell it. So for example, if your property is so upside down, you owe so much money on that property that you're never going to be able to get your money's worth out of it, legally you can sell it, but I don't know if you're going to be able to because it's going to be so eaten up with liens. You may have the most beautiful property in the world, but when you go to sell it, you find out that you're on a toxic waste dump. I can't promise you you're going to have the ability to sell it. I can tell you you have the right to sell it. Transferability. For something to have value, you must be able to transfer. Make sense? Okay. Demand, utility, scarcity, and transferability. Do you understand how they relate to value? Yeah. And most of these words, once you know the definition of them, I mean, once you see them, you realize they're words you already commonly use. Let's move on. Okay, market value. I'm going to have to, you're going to have to split hairs a little bit on market value. I gave you the definition of market value a while ago when I was giving you the definition of appraisal. I didn't mean to do that, but it works. It's okay. Appraisers look for market value. Agents look for probable sale price. So let me give you that definition again, and you'll see it matches up very, very closely with this slide right here. Market value. Do you remember what I said? The most likely price that a well-informed buyer and seller, typically motivated, would arrive at what type of market? Open market, free of any bias. Okay? So that's the definition I wanted to actually use for market value. Now here's what I want to tell you about that definition of market value. This is actually defined by law. Okay? So you're going to see some words come up here in just a moment that you're going to say, well, don't these mean the same thing? Aren't these words synonymous? Technically, they're not. Technically, market value means this exactly. Okay? Let me give you some other words. Market value versus market price. Market value versus market price. Market value, you just saw the definition of it, right? When you think of market price, think of this. Market price is what the market will pay on any given day. Market price, what will the market pay on any given day? When I think of market price, you know what I think about? The stock market. The stock market. Don't we see the stock market fluctuate from day to day? The values of companies don't change that radically from day to day. However, the price that someone's willing to pay for their stock might be that case. I hope you're never in this situation But can you recognize there's someone that might be willing to sell a property and they think, you know what, my property's worth $200,000, but if somebody shows up today with a check for $190, I'd let this bad boy go because I'm ready to move on to my next dream. The market value may be $200, but they might be willing to accept $190 on a given day, depending on what their motivation is. Do you see the technical distinction between market value, what the market will bear, the market price, what someone's willing to take at a particular time? Okay? Similarly, the difference between market value and market cost. For our purposes, let's keep it simple in here. When we talk about cost, what did you have into the property? What did it take you to create the property? Do you remember doing the cost approach math? You remember doing the cost approach math? What did it cost to build a property? That's what we mean by market cost. Do you understand that the market value, price, and cost on any given day are likely to be different numbers? Okay? They could be the same, but that would be a mere coincidence that they were the same. Market value, market price, market cost. You feel okay about that? You feel good enough that if it were a test question, you'd be able to understand the distinction? And do you understand that agents do not look for market value? We would look for probable sale price or probable sale range. Still good? Okay. This is just fun to talk about. Forces affecting value. Forces that affect value of our property. Again, look at these words, and I bet you could probably identify some ways that this applies. For example, how do social forces affect value? In real estate, how do social forces affect value? Have you ever heard of keeping up with the Joneses? Is that a real thing?
Yeah.
Yeah. If you don't think that's a real thing, I want you to come out to my neighborhood in Holly Springs and look at these houses that are 3,500 square feet, 4 bedrooms, 3 baths, and it has a married couple with no kids living in it. Why does a married couple with no kids need 3,600 square feet? They want it. That's what their peers have, okay? And that does affect value. If it didn't, would builders keep building these McMansions? They used to be referred to as the McMansions. I don't know what they look like today, okay? Social forces, clearly. Economic forces can affect it. What's getting ready to happen probably with interest rates? Think interest rates are getting ready to go up? And let's see how that affects the values to property. You know, we went, I tell a lot of people this story. My brother bought a house back in the early 80s, and he had, a high interest rate. I'm sure it was, 12, 14, somewhere like that. He only bought the house for about 83 grand. But his monthly payment was around $1,000. 20 years later, I buy a $200,000 house with an interest rate of 6%, and my monthly payment was right around $1,000. In other words, the monthly payment was roughly the same. What changed was the interest rate and the price. You know, for that same $1,000 today, I could buy 200 grand. So it was interesting to look at the dynamics of how much interest affected the values of properties. Always fun to look at those. As they start going up, we still are going to be in this this area because we have a lot of demand. How many people are moving into Wake County every day? Lisa, you just read this article the other day. How many people are moving into Wake County every day?
I think it was still 63, wasn't it?
63 was the number they used at that. We are not the fastest growing county in North Carolina. Did you know that? You know what the fastest growing county in North Carolina is? No.
Durham.
Not even close.
Coastal County?
It's a coastal county. It's Brunswick County. Is that
I think
what
so.
All their retirement.
What's that?
All the retirement communities.
Yeah, and plus it's also based on percentages. I mean, we're over 1 million people, and so we have to have a lot of growth for it to really affect it. Brunswick County's got 12 people in it. So last year they doubled to 24. So that's why they end up. You see statistics like that sometimes. They're not always meaningful, but they're interesting. They're interesting. My point is we have a lot of demand coming in. So we're going to weather the storm. We still have room for appreciation because we have so many people coming in. Even though interest rates are going up, we still probably will see an increase in home prices. Political forces can affect value. Have you ever heard the concept of an impact fee? An impact fee is, think about this, these growing communities around here, your Apexes, your Carries, I think even Creedmoor, somebody was telling me about that. The idea of an impact fee is for every new house that's built in an area, it impacts the infrastructure, right? Where's that kid going to go to school? What's going to happen with roads, sewerage, trash, all of this. So oftentimes what cities, municipalities will look at is, can we charge an impact fee per lot? Maybe it's $5,000, maybe it's $9,000, maybe it's $13,000. That's what the impact that this family is going to have on this on the infrastructure, and we're just going to charge that. Now, I don't know how well you know developers, but let me tell you a little secret about developers. If a developer ends up having to pay a $13,000 impact fee, do you think that they're going to eat that impact fee, or do you think they're going to pass it on to the consumer? They're certainly going to pass it on. They're certainly going to pass it on. So how's that going to affect home prices? And they got to go up. They got to go up. So anyway, impact fees, taxes, things like this clearly affect the value of property. And then finally, other things that affect the value of property, physical forces. Have you ever seen a Walmart built on the side of a mountain? Why do you never see a Walmart built on the side of a mountain? What do they need? Lots of flat land to build a Walmart. So the lay of the land can actually affect the value of the land. This also includes things like transportation as well. Physical forces, the lay of the land, the amenities that are available. When you take the selected topics class, we will talk about the resources, the linkages that are available in an area, actually give it value. Does that make sense? So again, look at those and just ask yourself, I kind of knew that before you walked into class. We're just putting it into a category. These are all things that affect value. These are things that affect value that you're going to get tested on. So make sure that you have a short definition of most of these words, okay? Let's get a high emphasis on these words. It's not hard, by the way. We just know you're going to get tested on. Basic economic principles of, it sounds scary. Basic economic principles of value. Here's the first one, highest and best use. We mentioned this in chapter 1. I said it would come up again in chapter 17. So here it comes with some emphasis in chapter 17. Here's your definition of highest and best use. At any given time, there is one use of property that will return its highest present value. At any given time, there is one use of a property that will return its highest present value. What do you suppose that use is? It's highest and best use. At any given time, there's one use of property that will return its highest present value. Okay? That is its highest and best use. Now, highest and best use assumes a few things. So let's get these on the table, just so you understand that there is a basis behind this. Highest and best use assumes that the use of the property is going to be legal. And what I mean by legal is I'm talking zoning for that. In other words, I can't just simply say, highest and best use of my property is to build an apartment complex. If it's zoned single-family residential, then that's not a legal use, so that doesn't count. It must be legal. It must be reasonable and feasible. It must be reasonable and feasible.
Same, right?
Yeah, they're roughly the same. For our purposes, that'll be close enough. I think I told you a story in this class about the property I have in Spring Lake. A guy called me and wanted to build a high-rise office building on it. There are 4,800 people, maybe it's 8,400 people in Spring Lake. How many high-rise office buildings do they really need in Spring Lake?